Start the thing, or whoever did that for me. Thank you. All right, so as always, we are recording this. You will get a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording after the meeting. If you have any questions, comments, things to address during the time we're presenting, feel free to raise your hand with the little icon at the bottom or shout it out in the chat. As always, we do have a Q&A and discussion period at the end. All right, so chatting today, we're going to start off with Salesforce's shared responsibility model and kind of what that means for you all as Salesforce admins, ourselves as developers on Salesforce, and what Salesforce's responsibilities are. We're going to chat about the least privilege model, which I'm sure if you've been in these user groups before, you've heard us mention, but we're going to go into that. We're going to discuss the order locking functionality that we have and a couple ways we envision you using this moving forward. And then we're just going to touch on some exception reporting and some things that we would recommend as best practice moving forward. So Salesforce, a shared responsibility model. It's a framework used by pretty much every cloud provider, which basically says what components of security they are responsible for and what components of security you are responsible for. So the key things to remember, Salesforce is basically going to handle the security of the cloud, but your responsibility with partnership is the security within the cloud. So things to be thinking of when we are chatting about that are things like access management. Am I giving the right people the right access to the right tools? Am I giving the right people the ability to install things like connected apps? And then just permissions, which we'll touch on some Avocado specific ones as well. In that as well as data protection, having a backup of your data and having a plan for restoring it in case of loss. We do not store your data that we archive, we pass it off to you. So making sure you either have a backup solution or a place where you can store that. Security settings, again, we try to keep you in the loop as much as possible if there are things coming down the pipeline from Salesforce. But things like multi-factor authentication, restricting your IP logins so that maybe your frontline staff isn't logging in while they're on vacation somewhere, and session timeouts. Additionally, this one is mostly us, but custom configurations, things like flows, code, third-party integrations all need to be built securely and maintained regularly. If you are doing your own flows, your own coding, your own screen flows, or you have other third-party integrations, it's worth making sure you know what your responsibilities are as admins for those. All right, so moving on to the principle of least privilege. Principle of least privilege is pretty commonly used with Salesforce, but again, across the board when it comes to permissions. The goal of this is that you are giving your users the minimum amount of access that they need to do their jobs. So we don't ideally want you having 29 sysadmins in your environment if you don't need 29 people to be able to delete records in Salesforce. So really working towards what is the minimum required for this position to do their job when you're considering creating your permission sets. So key things with this is risk mitigation. Obviously, by limiting access, you reduce an impact if someone does get into someone else's login of what they're able to access. If a single account was compromised, your intruder's movement is restricted to what only that user could see. There are obviously a lot of phishing attempts out there. So making sure that your staff emails are secure, but we limit what staff have access to in Salesforce. Operational stability, again, data integrity issues. We see this quite a bit where staff made a change because they were the most well-intended, but clicked the wrong button and did something they shouldn't do. We see this a lot with payment processing, things like instance upload. I accidentally uploaded 60 instances that I shouldn't have. So really making sure that we reserve those permissions and those access to people who are trained and know how to use them. As well as regulatory compliance and just maintaining clean data. When your permissions are a little more granular and you do have logged in users, It's a lot easier to see who did what and when and why potentially. So again, we've been chatting about this, I think, ongoing for maybe 2 years at this point, the Avocado menu permissions. I think a lot of you are using them, but this is going to be kind of the standard we're moving toward forward. That you will work with your account manager. We can provide you, it kind of looks like this nice little Excel sheet up here of what our recommended permissions are. And this controls all the buttons, not only on the main page of the Avocado menu, but multiple buttons and layers deep within the menu. So what we do is, again, we'll work with you. We provide you our base level, which is frontline, like a supervisor or a manager, your finance admin, and then your Avocado admins. If you do want to add different layers, because maybe you have like a supervisor 1 and 2, those are things we can help you set up. But the key things we really want you to focus on, and the reason why we're advocating so strongly for these, is that you're really limiting the processes that maybe your frontline users should not be doing. So things like making manual AR entries, things like batch running payments. You probably don't need your frontline having access to this. Any of those bulk processes, like instance uploading, bulk canceling like of an entire instance, you might not want a frontline to do, as well as like third parties. Sometimes that's reserved for like a childcare supervisor. So again, we can work with you on what those different levels are, but the goal is to go through this, try to move everyone towards it, because this is going to be how we restrict features in the future. So moving towards this so that your system is secure. And again, we'll work with you to make sure your levels are where they need to be. Just a couple quick tips. I know we all have to deal with turnover, unfortunately. So just a couple little things. Again, most of you do have either, some of you have this done through your email providers through Office. However, if you don't have user provisioning turned on, a couple tips to do are for your admins specifically, especially if it's an admin who does things like flows, screen flows, a lot of kind of custom reporting dashboards. Before you just blanket deactivate them, consider freezing them first. This will stop them from being able to log in, but it doesn't prevent anything like the flows that they created, the reports that they may be created from running if they are the running user. So typically, best course of action, again, freeze that account first, freeze that user, go through, see what they maybe do as a user, and then once you've confirmed that they aren't the running user for any of those processes, you're good to deactivate them. Again, probably less of an issue for your frontline, but definitely something you want to consider when you're looking at admin turnover. Another recent addition that we kind of introduced later on in last year, but wanted to bring back up just because we've gotten to a point where several of you have gone to audit for the past year. You had a December year end, but we have the ability to lock down orders. You have 2 ways of doing this. We can do it systematically via a batch job that runs nightly. You would basically configure your date, and any order prior to that date would be locked. Understanding that maybe you're not locking last year, but maybe 2 years prior is where you want to start. But you can also set this manually if you are an admin with access, and just basically toggle the box to lock the order in the back end. The goal for this is that you're not making changes to orders that happened in previous fiscal periods. So we sometimes see staff, again, best of intentions, maybe paid off an order from 3 years ago, and now that membership is starting to renew, and we're now charging them for 3 years worth of membership dues. This helps you prevent those kind of scenarios where we're going back in time and updating things that maybe shouldn't be updated. And we do have kind of some messaging that if you did have something with an outstanding balance, you can flag that they need to contact you. What we're going to be moving towards is actually rolling up any outstanding balances so you can kind of carry them over year to year and really lock down that previous year's data. The other thing we wanted to chat about that I think is a bit of an underutilized tool is exception reporting. So I know some of you do this, some of you may be in the middle of doing this, and some of you might just be getting started with doing this. But exception reporting really gives you the opportunity to bridge the gap between locking your staff into not being able to do anything and them being able to do everything. So understanding that you maybe don't want to restrict your frontline staff from doing a refund, but maybe your refund policy is that if it's over $100, a manager or a supervisor needs to be involved. Those are things that can be reported on in Avocado if you need them to be. So things like discount amounts is another common one we see. Staff are eligible to discount 10 to 15% for just customer satisfaction. But maybe you want to know if there's a staff member who's always discounting 20 and what that reason is. So what we recommend you do is kind of figuring out what your triggers and your thresholds are. So again, for my example, what's your red flag versus what's your standard operating procedure? So if you have that average refund of $50, maybe you want to look at $100 so that you're not flagging $60 orders that are one-offs. Automate your delivery. You can set them to be emailed. Obviously, any report, you can edit your subscription, have it sent to you daily, weekly, monthly. Additionally, you do have the option to send that report if any of the conditions are met. So if this amount is over $100, then I want to know, send this person that report. But we do recommend, even if you're not getting a lot of options of this, maybe you don't hit that threshold super often, going in and just reviewing every once a month, every couple months, just pick 3 to 5 and kind of take a look and say, is this an issue maybe with my trigger that I set it too high? We're never going over this, or is there something that needs to be adjusted in our policies? And then again, if you do find that data, revisit your SOPs, look for training opportunities. If it's always one staff that maybe you have an issue with, maybe it's because they always get the most agitated customers. Using this information as the starting point for reaching out to that staff to determine how you move forward. And then the other thing we recommend for yourselves as sysadmins is have that dashboard of all your exception reports. You can put it as, again, whatever name makes sense, but exception reporting, have that live as a dashboard where you can access all these reports nice and easily. You can subscribe to the dashboard and send it out to whoever you may need to. So a bit of a short presentation today, but just wanted to touch on moving forward with kind of security and making sure, again, I'm sure as everyone's heard, there's been some security concerns. We obviously are working with yourselves, working with Salesforce to make sure that we're operating as securely as possible. So again, continuing to have the conversation about some of the things we offer, some of the things that you as sysadmins are responsible for, and then some of the things that we can just help bridge the gap with. So just want to open the floor if anyone has anything they want to share that they're currently doing in terms of permissions, backups, reporting. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rachel.
Welcome.
Everyone's got their security down pat. Oh, Caitlin has a question.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
I was just gonna say, this is a great presentation. Thanks for doing it. We implemented like the custom permissions like about a year and a bit ago. And for anyone who hasn't done it yet, it is like it's changed a lot of my workflow as an admin that I'm often like, it was a lot of work at the moment, but now I've reduced my workload when it comes to like fixing errors a lot. So strongly recommend it. Was really helpful. And the audit report or the exception reporting as well, especially when it comes to program uploads, because we just have some rules around like, you know, when things go live and when cancellation can happen and things like that. So we use that for our program uploads a lot as well. And it's really changes like the administrative load so that you don't have to do so much reactively and you're kind of getting ahead of it.
Awesome.
Really appreciate you sharing that, Caitlin. I know that there's been, and I'm just to jump in here, and I'm hoping that you can kind of touch more on that beginner piece, because I know that there's a couple clients I've spoken to where it's just, I think it's overwhelming for the setup side of things. So I don't know if you can expand on that, and then just the hours that have been saved afterwards, just to continue with that encouragement, because we do want to see people lock things down, especially as we continue to add more features where people can really choose their own adventure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, definitely, I can appreciate that it is like a bit of a daunting project at the start. It definitely was for us as well. One thing that helped for us kind of before we started even touching any of the custom permissions was just going through our different users and kind of making like a persona table of like, here are our users that have varying tasks or varying level of responsibilities. So like our membership teams versus our program teams, and then at another level, like our frontline staff versus our managers, versus like administrators. So we kind of, that was really helpful to just like get us started in terms of, you know, who had different tasks in Avocado, and then we could go from there to kind of build out the permissions that we needed. And then yeah, we used like a combination, especially if you have like a more complex business operation where maybe you do have different permissions for like your membership team versus your program team, as well as manager and frontline. We did use like profiles and permission sets to help kind of support that, so that we weren't having to have like 20 different profiles for each possible combination of permissions, but rather we could kind of have like our base frontline permission and then add on program or membership or facility bookings, kind of those additional permissions as needed. And that has really, sorry, my cat just has joined the conversation. So yeah, I would just really strongly recommend like that user persona work first. And then in terms of time saved, like I cannot stress enough how much time we've saved. I don't know if anybody else gets like finance, like order related tickets that can be sometimes quite just time consuming to try to fiddle through and figure out like what happened on the order and look at all the histories and stuff. And so that in particular, like locking down our finance data on our orders has saved us. I honestly like probably was doing like 4 or 5 hours a week of just order tickets. And now I do like an hour a month. Like it's so much less, maybe a little bit more than an hour a month, because when they do come in they take a while, but yeah, it is so much better. Cannot stress enough how great it was to do the security setup.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Anyone else have anything they want to share or any questions about anything presented? Going twice. All right. If no one has anything else, thank you so much for coming. We'll provide the recording, provide the presentation. And if you do, obviously our account managers and our project management team will be following up in your monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, whatever your meeting frequency is, to continue to address this, because we are moving towards this being our new standard. So that'll be coming up in meetings, as well as you'll see it kind of consistently continue to grow as we move forward. But if there's any questions or concerns in the meantime, feel free to reach out to your respective account manager. Thanks, everyone.